Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's panel on leaders and allies. So this is a panel bringing together leaders of leaders and people, the talking man, Matt, and the women doing great work to improve inclusion within their industries. So today on my panel, I have Susie Cummins, the founder of New Role, Matt Turner, the founder of Taste Card, and Anna Keeling, the MD of Boeing Defense UK. So we're going to just jump right in and pick their brains around what organizations can do to improve inclusion, but also what they are also doing as individuals, as allies of inclusion within the workplace. So I'm going to start with Matt. Matt is a fantastic leader, and he has developed many female leaders within his business. He's a wise man, so he always puts a woman in charge when he wants things done. So Matt, can you tell us some of the things you look out for in building your teams, because you've been able to achieve inclusion?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we look for quality, and I think that's irrespective of gender. Having said that, I mean, we've talked in length before, Griselda, about some of the fantastic female leaders within our business. I remember, if I go back 7 years, we chose our first chairperson, and there were a huge number of applicants for the job, and the successful candidate was actually the only female applicant. Incredible lady, called Annette Court. We were her first chair position, but she was MD of Direct Line at the age of 36. And she went on to become the chair of Admirals, so she's now chair of a FTSE 100 business, and she was a fabulous addition to our board in probably a very male-dominated industry in terms of private equity. So we're backed by a private equity fund, which is certainly underrepresented in terms of women. So there wasn't any opposition to appointing Annette, but it was probably quite novel for a business like ourselves, backed by a private equity fund, to have a female chair. I thought she brought some amazing qualities to the role. Incredibly strong, incredibly fair, but a wonderful sense of work ethic, but also a level of emotional intelligence that was probably lacking from maybe some of the other non-execs, which I thought was a fabulous quality that she brought to the board. Our other board member that is female is our ops director, who is other than myself, our longest serving director in the business, a lady called Sam. She came to the business 9 years ago now, and one of the key things that I always look for, and Sam is the absolute epitome of this, is as I said already, work ethic. But when you speak to somebody who's a back to work mum, which Sam was, and she'd nailed the interview within 10 minutes, but about an hour in, she's looked at me and said, you know, I've been out of work now as a full-time mum for 3 years, and I just want to be given a chance. And I looked at her and I said, that's never in doubt. And she has been an incredible member of the team, turned into a friend, I guess I would probably call her now. And again, the soft skills that she brings to the business with a steely resilience, I think, you know, you actually do get from being a back to work mum, because there's no job harder in the world than having babies at home, and having 2 babies sort of 14 months apart, as I know myself. So I think that if somebody can juggle the work that somebody like Sam does for us, bringing a different skill set from maybe some of the drier men around the board table, then I think it's fantastic. And it certainly softens the business in terms, or softens the board meetings when it comes to the emotional side, and lowers down the testosterone and the aggression maybe that you have around the board table. There are only 5 full-time directors in the business, of which Sam is the only female. But on our next level down, our senior leadership team, we have 10 members of that team, 6 of whom are female. So they're the sort of the succession planning there, you can see is actually weighted more towards female. And then the level below that is actually 65% female. So I think that, you know, when it comes to diversity and inclusion from a gender perspective, I like to think that we're at the forefront. That said, I don't believe in affirmative action, so I would only ever bring somebody in who is capable of doing the job and who's the best person for the job, irrespective of gender. But in many cases, that is clearly a woman.
So that is such a fantastic example. And I know you've introduced me to Annette as well. Susie and I have spoken at length about our mutual frustration about how boards recruit and the fact that it's still very much, you know, a boys club, who knows who opportunity and access. And Susie, can you tell us about the work you're doing with Neural to try and level that playing field using technology?
Yeah, sure. Well, so what we're doing, just by way of background, you know, I was a traditional headhunter for 30 years. And about 7 years ago, I had one of those light bulb moments. And I thought, surely in this digital age, there must be a better way than all those endless cups of coffee. You know, I was probably having 5 cups of coffee a day for 30 years. And sometimes I had the right job for someone and very often I didn't. So I thought, well, we must be able to leverage technology, and we've done so, or we're certainly in the process of doing so. And we built a platform called New Role, and it really is changing the way organizations hire at board level. And probably the best way to explain how it works is to give you an example. And we were working with a company called ICG, which is a FTSE 250 company. And they were looking for a US-based female to join the board as a non-executive. And the skill they wanted is somebody who had funds distribution expertise. And the chairman had been using 2 of the Shrek firms for a year. I don't know if you all know what Shrek is, but it's Spencer Stewart, Hydrix, Russell Reynolds, Egon Zehnder, Korn Ferry. And they hadn't come up with the right candidate. So we put it on the platform. We blasted out to all, we have 50,000 members, and probably about 700 of them had said they were potentially interested in that type of role. Anyway, what happened was that somebody, within 24 hours of it going out, somebody recommended a woman called Amy Schuldeger, who is living in Los Angeles. She just stepped off BlackRock's executive committee, and she wanted a board role. She wanted to build a portfolio career. But guess what? She couldn't get any of the Shrek firms to meet her because she didn't already have a board role. So she signs up to New Role. She applies for the ICG role, and she's joined the board. And 6 months afterwards, she'd met every single Shrek firm, and she's just also joined the board of AIG. And this is what we find, you know, is so exciting. And we've now done, in December last year, we placed our 1,000th board member, person on board in 7 years, but 40% of those were last year in 2020. We placed 400 last year, which is bigger than most of the board practices of the big firms. This year already, we've done 600 or 700 year to date. And our sort of statistics are amazing. You know, it's sort of, I mean, I think it's 40% are female, 17% bring ethnic diversity, 30% are first timers. You know, we're really accessing those people like Amy, who are beneath the traditional headhunters' radar screens. So that's, hopefully that explains a bit about how it works.
So Susie, can you tell us how the technology works? So how can someone like me, who is beneath the radar for most board appointments, even though I'm a chartered accountant and have a lot of experience, if I may say so myself, how can someone like me, someone watching this interview, begin to have visibility of some of these roles, and how is the technology working to make that happen?
Okay, so it's invitation only. So you can only get on the platform if you're recommended by somebody else. You can apply for an invitation. And if you are obviously board ready because you already sit on the board of, you know, XYZ companies, then we send you an invitation. When you sign up, you say what sectors, roles, and geographies you're interested in. That's on the one side of the platform. On the other side, we have organizations, and they're the ones actually who pay us. And they put up their roles. So what we're doing is we're running an open hiring process. And I can talk a bit about that and the sort of pros and cons of open hiring, because it's completely different to the sort of the very, you know, the little black books, the closed, you know, traditional headhunters are very secretive. You know, if you say, well, tell me all the non-exec roles you've got on, you know, they won't tell you. They don't advertise them. We are advertising them, but to a sort of controlled audience. And what we're giving the organization is exactly the same sort of experience that they'd get from a traditional headhunter. They get a long list of the 10 strongest and closest matches. We take reference on those people, and we then help them choose 3 or 4 to interview. But in terms of the actual technology, it's sort of algorithms that we're working on the whole time. And at the moment, we're working on, basically, we notify you of roles you said you're interested in. So, because if you're a chartered accountant, we are more likely to send you audit chair type roles. We only do chairs and non-execs and advisory board members. We don't do any executive roles. So if you say that you're interested in roles in Paris and Melbourne, and you want audit chair roles, and you like energy and transport and retail, that's what we will send you. And we're refining those algorithms the whole time. And one thing that's very exciting is that we are about to start matching people's backgrounds as well. So at the moment, it's just done on what you said you want. But we're now going to match the background. So the algorithms are just getting better and better all the time. I mean, and hopefully, in sort of the next 3 months, it will be an even better experience than it is now.
So thank you so much, Susie. Coming to Anna. Anna, you're a woman on the board. You've had the experience. You've been through that journey. Can you just talk us through how you made that first, you got your first appointment?
So it's been a long and arduous journey, and I'm really pleased to hear about some of the new technologies and platforms coming into play. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be with you here with such an esteemed panel, so thank you. Certainly, I mean, a lot of my experiences, Griselda, as you know, have been shaped in the aerospace and defence industry. So I have the great pleasure of leading Boeing Defence here in the UK. I've enjoyed and had a privilege to have quite an international career. That journey wasn't easy, and I think we will have many women out there listening today who will have their own stories. I commenced as a graduate. I've always had a keen interest in engineering, and I think from the very beginning it was very obvious to me that I needed to do well, dare I say, to be better, to stand out. I needed advocacy and support, and I think that's been a running theme through my career. The other thing I would say, it is about having your voice heard, because Susie is right. You don't always come to the attention of to headhunters, especially as you're making your way in the industry and you're starting out your career. So it really is, Griselda, about those things: the use of self, taking on that challenge, being brave. Networking, making contacts, leveraging organizations such as your own. And I know many of your members do that. And it's wonderful to see you expand the role of Forward Ladies from, not just small, medium enterprises, but also now into the corporate world, more into, industries like aerospace and defense, where we still have, a very large male dominated workforce. So I think that's really important. So I would say, like a true engineer, I learned along the way, right? I was open-minded, and it is about taking risks and putting yourself out there. And that's certainly what I would say. I've had experiences where I have been the first and the only, we talk about the onlys, whatever diversity it is you're holding your hand up for, but the first and the only on a board, on that particular occasion in a board that was all male. And that isn't easy, but it can be done, right? And I want people to know that there is a lot of support out there. I always say, so I'll maybe leave it there, play every card that you have been dealt, right? Leverage anything that is open to you. And certainly, forums like this are a great opportunity to connect, to learn from other people. To get names down, connect on LinkedIn and reach out to other people who are truly dedicated to changing this space.
Yeah. So Anna, I know you are a very passionate ally, not just of women, but of the inclusion agenda altogether. And the aerospace sector, as we know, is very, is the least diverse compared to other sectors. And it's quite challenging being a woman or a minority within that sector. So in your role,
Sophie and Kath, we've lost Griselda. Griselda, I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat the question.
Okay.
For a short while.
Right. Okay. So I was saying that, Anna, we know you're very passionate and advocate supporter of the inclusion agenda within the aerospace sector. And we all want to improve inclusion within aerospace because we all fly on planes and we love the idea of flying, especially now as we've not had a chance to do that for 2 long years. So as a woman, as a leader, as the MD of Boeing Defense, what are you doing within your role to create a sustainable pipeline of future talent?
Yeah, so there's lots that I can talk about, but I think I will focus on one area. And for me, you know, again, based on my experiences and those of my peers, early careers, that space is just so important for building that pipeline. I mean, there's lots of things that you can do when you have a more established workforce, of course, or a mature workforce. But I think the importance of early careers is important for any organization. And I would say it doesn't matter whether you're a big organization like Boeing Defense or a smaller organization. You know, in this country, there is government support, for example, for things like apprenticeships. There are levies. So we as a business leverage all of those avenues, right? Whether it's inviting interns into our business on an annual basis, apprenticeships and graduates. And I think you can really move the needle in terms of change with the early careers part of what you do for a number of reasons. First of all, it can be very intentional, okay? Secondly, it can be planned. I mean, absolutely, to what Matt said, you choose the best people for the job, but you have more time to spend to find those best people who offer some of those other advantages of diversity. So we now have, I mean, we've been at this for about 5 years, so not a long time. And within that time, we've hired over 300 people in our early careers. And because we've been intentional, right, because we've you know, built these programs and made them better. I've just come off a lunch with our graduates talking about what we should continue, what should we start, and what we might stop in our graduate program. So we've been able, through that intention, achieve, you know, a really equitable intake. So we have age diversity, we have ethnic diversity, we have over 50% women across those programs, right? So I think it can be really powerful, and I'd encourage anyone, no matter how big or large a business you are, take advantage of the support that's out there and really embrace early careers and see how you can bring, you know, young, energetic, open-minded and diverse talent into your business.
Thank you so much, Anna, for that. Matt, I know as a small business myself, well, your business is significantly bigger than mine. I find that small businesses have this perception that inclusion is a large corporate organization agenda, and you know we don't have the time or the energy to be looking at inclusion. We are looking for someone to fill a role very quickly. And typically, when I speak to male founders, inclusion is the last thing on their mind. They think it's not their issue, it's not their problem. So what do you have to say to the men who are still not convinced that they should be doing their bit to support inclusion and that it's a fantastic business opportunity?
Well, we take diversity and inclusion incredibly seriously, and we actually have somebody dedicated, along with her other role, in terms of sort of the social aspects of the business, to look after diversity and inclusion, and massively important to us. I think listening to Susie and Anna, one thing that I've always found disappointing is the amount of extra hard work that women have to make to get their voices heard and to stand out from the crowd. And actually, the way that we work is I almost have to untrain some people when they come in. So if I give one example, and this is actually of a female in our business, she came in from, she's mid-30s, she's done incredibly well, she's part of our senior leadership team, but she came in from an incredibly aggressive business in Manchester, where she had certainly had to shout loudest to get her voice heard and to stand out. But actually, not her fault, but she'd had to go so far that I had to untrain certain elements of her personality to say, look, as a business, we aren't like that. You don't have to be like that to succeed in our business. because you're starting to be in danger of now stepping on other people. And I think it's a shame that actually I'm having to do that with her. And I think that actually some male leaders would not take the time to do that. And we've got nearly 200 staff now. I have one person that I mentor, and I've chosen her to mentor for the next 6 months because I can see the absolute qualities that she's got. And I can see her sitting on a board of directors one day, whether it's our business or whether it's another, but she has to lose some of these habits that she's picked up, but she's almost been forced to pick up from her previous employment. And I find it incredibly frustrating. But as a business leader, what I like to do is try and help people along and demonstrate that actually in our business, you don't have to be like that. Whatever your gender, whatever your race, religion, it doesn't matter from my perspective. If you're good enough, then we will see that you're good enough. So I find that, of course, we make it very clear that diversity and inclusion is incredibly important to us, but we also make it clear that everybody in our business certainly is on a level playing field. What I find most frustrating and disappointing is that clearly isn't the same across all businesses, and I see that firsthand with some of the people that come in and some of the bad habits that unfortunately they've learned. And the only thing I can liken it to as a man is that when I started this business, I was 26, and I was going into board meetings and boardrooms of CEOs of the largest sort of hospitality businesses in the UK, and it was obviously very male dominant, but it was people in their 40s and 50s, and I was this sort of young kid, if you like, that almost had to prove myself. So I understand that mentality of having to shout louder and having to prove people wrong, and feeling that actually I need to get all these points across because I'm 26 and these guys are 50 and they've done so much more than me, and everyone's going to take them more seriously because they're older than me. But having, even by the time I've been doing in the business for 5 years, I was still only 31, but I probably had more experience than many of the CEOs that I was meeting within the industry. And I think that's sort of the message that I try and get across to people who come into our business who maybe need their hand holding a little bit, and showing that not all businesses are like that. And in our business, certainly everyone has a level playing field. I don't know if that answers your question, Griselda.
No, it does. But to the point about, Anna, do you want to contribute to that?
No, I just wanted to add and emphasize, because I think Matt has said something really, really important there. I mean, certainly for many of us, and I'm sure it'll be the case for Susie, our personal experiences have shaped our passions. But as leaders, I think you've got to decide. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're in an association, at a school, in a small business, a large business. As a leader, you've got to make that choice. It's either important or it isn't. And so commend Matt, and that's what leaders need to do. They need to set the tone and say, this is important, right? Diversity and inclusion is important, and I'm going to set that tone for the organization. Yeah.
Fantastic. And to Matt's point earlier on about women having to learn to almost be aggressive, to be able to cope within certain sectors. I know that hospitality has been very badly hit over the course of the last few months, aerospace included. And so I'm just wondering, Matt, as the person in charge, the leader with the vision, how have you been able to motivate and keep the business ticking, going, even when you've not been able to trade properly for a significant period of time?
It's been a difficult 18 months, 2 years, I guess now, 18 months, I suppose. I think from my perspective, you have your concerns. It's taken 17 years to build the business up, and I've in effect sold it twice, but still own a third of it, so sort of very much invested in the business. And if you go back 2 years, I could never have envisaged a time where all of my partner restaurants, 10,000 restaurants, were closed and 4 million customers locked up and can't use the product. I mean, that is just something that was completely inconceivable. And what I felt was important was, I might have had my concerns in the background, but it was reassuring the team that things would be okay, that we were liquid, we had cash reserves, that we would come through the other side. And when you can't reassure people face to face, and we are a very personable business, you have to do it through other ways. So I sent an email every 3 days at the beginning, was very, very, very open with people, not quite to the point of telling them how much money we had in the bank, but reassuring them that we were liquid and we could continue without, in essence, trading for over a 12-month period. And we did keep on trading, but letting them know about key contracts that we had, about reassurance that we had from key clients of ours. And and about new products that we were spinning up and the work that we were doing in the background. And also, as time went on, singling people out for praise for some of the work they were doing. And actually, you know, my emails every 2, 3, 4 days were one thing, but what was most humbling was seeing people, not even necessarily senior members of the business, but people working 15, 16 hours a day from home, whether it was design, whether it was product, and not asking for any thanks, but you could see the work they were doing. And this wasn't their business, they're not shareholders in the business, but they cared so much about the business that it was a humbling point. But, you know, to highlight those people and let everybody else know the amazing work they were doing, I think created that togetherness and that spirit, which I think we had it already. And if we hadn't had it before we went into lockdown and everyone was working from home, then we might have struggled. And clearly that there's a finite period of time where actually you need to get people back in, because it can only go on for a certain period of time. But certainly the goodwill that we had across the business and the passion for the business itself, I was incredibly humbled by some of the work that was done. And we've managed to keep that sort of small business mentality, family mentality going, despite the fact that I guess in terms of turnover, profit and staff numbers, we're probably a medium-sized business now. So I played a small part, which was sort of staying optimistic in the face of adversity. But you know, it's hard not to be optimistic when you've got people who are sort of pushing you along from behind you.
Spoken like a true leader. Anna, I know, you know, the defense sector and aerospace has had similar challenges, trading very hard. And so what can you share? Can you share your own journey navigating the challenges of the past few months?
Yeah, what an extraordinary time for all of us. I think you'll be surprised to hear, hopefully, that, you know, regardless of the industry, the sector, the challenges we faced were very similar, and the actions that we took and found to be impactful were in fact very similar. So what Matt has said really resonates with me. I mean, certainly, you know, we're a business that follows government directions like anyone else. For anyone that could work from home, we followed that directive. And like many of folk across the UK, you know, our employees picked up their laptops and went home. We do have quite a large operational base where we support the customers' fleets, helicopters, aeroplanes, and these were really required, you know, suddenly for humanitarian efforts, for relief efforts. So our people on the ground had to continue working, and we needed to keep them safe. And then, of course, for those of us who started to work from home, and yes, we're now making the comeback into the office, it was all about connection. It was all about transparency. It was all about communication. And of course, let's not forget, you know, just because I'm a defense business, it does not mean that we are not impacted by what is happening on the commercial side. So what was being asked of us was greater, because we had to help our brothers and sisters and colleagues around the world in the commercial space where planes were grounded, right? And we needed to adapt to new market realities very quickly. And yes, that, you know, there were a number of people that lost jobs across the Boeing portfolio. We took as many of them as we could. We were luckily a growing business through the pandemic. So my business took Boeing commercial employees into our portfolio, over 103 here in the UK. And that, again, brought an incredible amount of diversity to our workforce, because all of a sudden we were using their skill set, their know-how, the agility of maintaining a commercial fleet, right, to maintain military aircraft where things go a little bit slower generally, right? So that diversity was really leveraged. And really, as Matt said, I completely increased my communications, email, and this type of communication as well, you know, live virtual communications with employees, because we were all in it together, right? And it was so important that we made it through together. And I would say this is where a leader can really leverage their diverse perspectives and experiences, where a leader really needs to lean into a more inclusive style of leadership, right? Try new things, take some risks, but more importantly, show their humanity. So I really, as a woman in the industry, I felt that my humanity became a great strength to me and therefore my organization during the pandemic.
Yeah, and I have to say, Anna is one of the people who reached out to me just to check in. Are you still there? How are you doing? And it's really great to see leaders who not only care about their own communities, but also about some of the suppliers, large or small, that they're working with. And Susie, I know you call yourself a startup. You're a 50-strong team. You're in technology, and it's growing. How has the past few months been for you?
Well, I think we've been very lucky because we're an online business, and you know, we can do everything online. You know, those coffees was the reason, you know, the human interaction was the reason I set up Neural, because I just thought it wasn't very efficient. But I mean, I completely agree with what you've all been saying. I mean, you know, we were having, you know, sort of probably 3 times a week we'd check in with the whole team on these Zoom calls. I mean, it's really, really important. I mean, you know, it has been very difficult from a just sort of, you know, mental health perspective. I mean, I think it's been really, really tough. But hopefully, you know, we've come through the other side, and you know, I think through that sort of leadership that Anna's talking about, you know, we've you know, things are looking pretty good now.
Yeah. And thank you so much for touching on a very important point, mental health. It's a I don't want to say it's a buzz now. It shouldn't be, because it's a very important issue impacting all of us, whether we choose to label it as such or not. And I'm just curious to know, what are some of the things you're doing on the ground to champion the whole mental health agenda, to provide the support that, you know, our teams need now that we're coming out. It seems we're coming out, but we're going back in because of December and the cold weather and some of the challenges we're facing. What are some of the things you're doing as a leader to really champion the whole mental health agenda? I'll pose this one to Matt. Oh, Anna, yes, Anna, you can take that.
Well, I can kick us off. I'm sure we all have something to contribute. Yes. Absolutely. So I mean, there's a number of things that we're doing. I mean, first of all, like I said, it's either important or it's not. So certainly, you know, from my perspective, my leadership team in the Boeing organization, it's absolutely on the agenda, right? It's not a fad. It's not a buzzword. It's real, right? Our employees really struggled through the lockdown. There's no question about it. The sense of face-to-face connection, collaboration, that sense of belonging is really important to us as human beings. So absolutely, we actively, you know, spoke about it, encouraged teams to speak about it. We put together, Boeing has an amazing support network and a support program, so a hotline where employees, you know, can pick up the phone. Now, I know that some of the, let's say, privileges of a larger organization did more fundamental things at the ground level. So I did ensure that we were dedicating time to it. We launched through the summer, when lockdown started to ease up a bit, wellness events where, yes, we put a little money aside and encouraged our employees to get together, engage in a physical activity, go for a team lunch, right? And to talk about mental health and to talk about some of the experiences of lockdown and what it means to them. And then the big thing right now for us is actually learning from the pandemic and introducing more flexible ways of working, because that is about work-life balance, and that speaks to mental health. So we're leaning in and we're rolling out, we're deploying as we speak, a flexible workplace arrangement where, you know, it is role-based, obviously, and that conversation takes place between an employee and their manager. But our people will have the ability, for those roles that can, to work from home, which I think is not something we would have envisaged 18 months ago.
Yeah, and to think, you know, I'm dialing in from Ghana. I had some family challenges and needed to fly down, and I'm able to do that. And I just think that's the future. You know, I can take my laptop and come down and work from here, enjoy the gorgeous weather, and still feel I'm making a difference, irrespective of where I'm based. So I definitely agree that it's the future. But we also know that some leaders are driving employers to come back in, because future talent needs contact and access and that connection. What's your perspective on that, Matt?
I would love everybody to be back in the office full time, and I do think from a mental health perspective it would be better for them. But realistically, we can't do that, because people do want flexible working now. They've got used to it. Other employers will offer them flexible working. So we will offer them flexible working. Personally, I think it would be better for everybody to be in the office in our organisation, because I think communication, I think human interaction, face-to-face, makes a huge difference to people. And digitally, we'll do what we can. We pay for an app for everybody called 87%, which is a health and wellbeing app. We have our internal learning and development officer who runs various workshops with regards to mental health, and it's something that we always encourage people to talk about. I always signed off my emails with a quote from Nelson Mandela, who's my hero, which I always found inspirational. I think other people used to quote them back, which became a bit of a joke internally, but I think that it is important for people to feel inspired and listen to. But in terms of encouraging people to go back into the office at the moment, it's mandatory to be there 2 days for people, unless they're in something like customer services, where they have to be in the office 5 days ultimately. For the marketing, the tech and the sales teams, it's 2 days a week at the moment. But as I say, my personal view is that people would benefit from being back in the office more. I really believe that. But it's a fine balancing act, and there are many businesses that will offer more flexibility than that, and I'm afraid that that's something that you can't rail against at the moment, and we have to sort of accept that people want to work in a certain way. We can encourage them to be back in, but we certainly wouldn't treat them in a different way if they didn't take that encouragement to come in more than 2 days a week at the moment. So balancing act, I think, Griselda, but I'd like to see things return to as they were before the pandemic in many ways.
Yeah. So Susie, what's your opinion on that? The whole mental health, back in the office, hybrid working.
I'm a great believer in hybrid working. I mean, personally, I'm in the office every day because I like to be in the office every day. I mean, there are quite a few people who've got longer commutes than me who are not. And I think, they probably do get a lot more done if they spend a day at home. But we also organize a lot of social events. We had a team breakfast this morning. I really believe in the sort of, staying in touch and one-on-one, meetings with your manager. There's a lot of the sort of software that you can use that can help with feeding in, how you're feeling. And every Friday we use something called Lattice, where you feed in how you're feeling, and you mark, and so we can get anonymized how's the sort of mental health of the company. We give everyone a subscription to Calm. We train people a lot on this. We've just had a role playing with the sort of all the managers today in the office, and there are actually 3 people who came in online and 9 people who were actually in the office, and we were in teams of 4 doing role playing on how do you, if you're managing somebody who's got a problem. So somebody was the person with the problem, somebody was the manager, and then we had an observer. And there's so many things. I mean, it's a wonderful thing about all these podcasts. There's so much out there where you can learn from other people's best practice. But I think it's really, really important, and it's what makes your culture. And culture, I think, is almost the single most important thing of what will make a happy company that's going places.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you raised the issue of culture as well, because Max touched on it briefly. When you leave a very toxic environment where you've had to really, develop certain habits to get you through, to break through the noise, to be heard, to be seen, and then you go into a more nurturing environment, you can't stick out like a sore thumb. But what are you doing as leaders, as custodians of the culture within your companies, just to make sure that you're keeping it, you're driving it in the right direction? What are some of the things you've been doing just to keep the culture right and to keep it positive and inclusive? Anna, would you like to take that?
Sure. I mean, look, it's exceptionally important. It's the stuff that we do when no one else is looking. And it's such a sense of belonging for an organization. And let me maybe, draw a parallel between the conversation we've just had on hybrid working, being back in the office, virtual working. Even though we are leaning into flexible working, as I said, I am very clear as a leader that our offices will remain the centers of culture and collaboration. right? And that's the premise, because it is about coming together. That's where culture is created. So we're speaking very actively about the sort of culture we want for the organization. We've just recently been through, a revision of our strategy, and culture is central to that. And we're now holding a series of workshops across the business so that we all have a voice in shaping our culture, right? That's exceptionally important. But as a leader, I think one of the most powerful things you can do is set the tone, is role model. I mentioned that before. And it is how you show up every day. So by saying diversity and inclusion is important, that sets the tone. By instilling that in our systems, to use that as an example, right? I can't say it's important and then I act, not inclusively. I can't then turn a blind eye when our talent shortlists are not diverse, when our panels for interviews are not diverse, if we're using inappropriate language in the way that we advertise and talk about our organization. So it has to be consistent, right? So there's some of the things that I'm doing, that my organization is doing, and it's that tone from the top, it's the consistency, and then making sure that intent is clearly articulated across the entire systems of the organization.
Yeah. I know, I run the leadership programs, and one of the biggest common challenges of complaints I hear from the women who go on our program is the leaders are saying one thing, but then on the ground, it's completely different. And I banged my head against the wall so many times that I don't think I can do that anymore. And it's time to move on. So as we're setting the tone at that level, how can we make sure that the people on the ground can see that filtering through? Because we're doing so much work to drive the recruitment agenda to get more diverse talent through the doors. We're doing so much for flexible working to keep people already in the business. But the one sure way we can get rid of them all very quickly is when they come to work, and as Anna has been saying, not feeling a sense of belonging and seeing that inconsistency in the messaging from the leaders and in the day, and how the managers or the line managers are showing up. And that's a huge challenge. So what can we do on that level to support people who are just not having an easy ride of it at all? Susie, do you have anything to contribute to that?
I think one thing that's very interesting is how people communicate their mission and their values, and it's getting people to buy into that. And that's an awful lot of sort of people say that, but there really is, where is the company going? Why is it going there? It's really important from people all the way up the organization to understand that. So I think that's something from that needs to happen from the top. And I think it just comes back to the to getting people, listening to people. We've just taken on 5 new graduates, and we had we do quite a few offsites where we will take cross-sectoral teams away, sort of 8 or 9 of them. And there's one thing that we're trialing now, which is a sort of a graduate with 4 months experience. It was an idea. I think it's a really interesting idea, and we're trialing it, and we may well take it on. And I think that sort of thing is really important. It's listening to people, to everyone's voice.
Yes.
And that's what people really value, if they feel like they are being heard and they are being useful and they are being treated with respect. But it's so difficult. The whole sort of culture thing is very difficult, because it's some of the very big organizations have a culture, and it's like moving a tank. They may want to change their culture, but it is very, very difficult. But it's equally very difficult for small companies to build that culture. So I don't know quite what I'm saying here. I mean, I just think it's a really sort of, I'm trying to squash a lot into a very short time. I mean, it's a really interesting topic, this, and it would almost, we could have a whole hour talking just about that. I think there's so many things that we can learn from each other.
Yeah. But Matt is somebody who's done it from the ground up. He started with nothing and has built a team where the culture is very positive, and so Matt, what are some of the things you've been doing as a small business to get the culture right from get-go?
I think culture starts from the top, and you have to behave in a way and follow through with what you're saying. You can't just say it for effect. So every time it's somebody's anniversary in our business, I will either go to see them or send them an email thanking them for their work, whether it's 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter. I'll make the point of thanking them for everything they've done. I think that for me, culture is all about openness, honesty, integrity, trust. So trusting each other, trusting your colleagues to do the job that you want them to do and they're employed to do without being all over them all the time, or just, you might as well just be doing it yourself. And I think that I always say to people, look, you are here for X amount of hours per day, per week, per month, per year. It's important for me that you're happy here. And if you aren't, then I really need to know, and we'll find you something else, something else internally or something somewhere else, because that's what the culture is about. You spend most of your life at work. So it's important that people are happy. And I think that if there is any negativity, if there is a person that is really detracting from the culture and having a negative impact, then you need to sort it out pretty quickly. I won't tolerate it in my business, and because I think it's crucial that we're all pulling in the same direction. We can have disagreements, we can disagree about what the business should be doing, etc., but we should all want the same thing. We should all want to succeed for ourselves and for each other, and ultimately that's about respect. And I think as a leader, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, how much money you've earned, how successful you are. You have to remain humble. Yes, you can be professional and you can work hard and you can have achieved a lot and you can command respect in that way, but you'll command even more respect if you then show that you are continuing to strive, keeping your standards high, and also keeping that level of humility about you and being humble. And for me, that's what it's all about. And if we lost the culture in our business, then I wouldn't be able to work in there anymore. I wouldn't be able to run that business, and I'd just retire and I'd go and I'd sell the business. But with the culture that we have and the way that we work together, that's what gets me out of bed and gets me into the office or straight onto WhatsApp or whatever other way we're communicating with our colleagues at the moment, from early in the morning till late at night. And that's the key for me. I think the business is all about culture.
Yeah. But you've touched on a really important point, Matt, about taking action when there are people that are not contributing positively to the culture you're trying to build. And I think that's probably one of the areas where when you hesitate, the cost of not taking immediate action can be quite significant and hefty over time. Yeah,
we don't live in a perfect world, and unfortunately you will employ some people that don't fit in your business for one reason or another, culturally or not, and you will make bad decisions yourself and you will employ the wrong type of person. And if it's not working out, then you do have to act decisively, and that gives other people within the business the reassurance that they are protected in terms of their mental health, they're coming to work, the actual culture of the business is protected. And fortunately, it doesn't happen very often, but in 17 years, of course, there's been a handful of instances where I have employed the wrong people in quite senior positions and had to rectify that because I could see incredibly negative things happening, and unfortunately have to act. And that's not something that you take any joy in doing, but you have to act for the greater good of the business and the greater good of the other people in the business. And I think you have to be realistic about that. It happens within businesses every day of the year. Anna's waving at me, so I'll let Anna speak.
No, I was just indicating, I just wanted to reinforce something that you're saying there, Matt. I think it's really important. I know there'll be lots of people on this listening and sort of saying, yeah, the culture is hard. It's the hardest bit, right? I'm sure my peers here will agree. It is the hardest bit of managing a team, a business, or whatever it is that you're doing, and know that it's never ending. It's not like a milestone or the annual accounts or anything like that. It is never done. And I think the sooner you realize that as a leader and that it is your job and you just have to keep at it all the time, I think the easier it gets, because you are never done. You have to continue correcting the course as outlined. It's a constant journey.
It's really true. And new starters in our business will often say to me, give me a typical day. What do you do when you go into our Manchester office? And actually, when I go into our Manchester office, I quite often just clear my diary, because I go and plonk myself right in the middle, and I get no traditional, if you like, work done. I get no emails answered. I'd go to no meetings because people will just be walking past me and I'll grab them or they will grab me and I'll talk. But people might consider that not working. I consider that a hugely important part of working, and actually probably my role now. So I'll laugh and I'll say, look, there's far more intelligent people than me doing the marketing now and doing the sales and doing X, Y, and Z, and I don't understand technology. But actually I'm fulfilling my role by sitting in the middle there and being seen and being able to be seen by people and being open to talk to people. And actually that's probably more important than me going out and trying to sell something or making a mess of some marketing, because I'm too old to do it these days.
Yeah. So I wanted to find out a few questions on perceptions. So some industries are perceived as male dominated. I particularly think the aerospace sector is very interesting because of just the scope and the scale of what you're involved in. So Anna, what do you have to say to people who are just looking at, say, a company like Boeing and thinking it's not for someone like me? How can we get more of them to come and check out some of the opportunities within the business?
Yeah, big question, Griselda, and there's lots. So let me just maybe focus in on some of the important things. I mean, first of all, you know, we are truly committed to a diversity and inclusion agenda. We make sure that our prospective hires know that upfront. And the way that we engage, you know, with prospective talent, new talent is really important. So as I said, simple things like making sure that, you know, they're clear about our values and objectives as an organization, that what they experience are diverse and passionate people and inclusive styles of communicating. That is really important. And I think coming out of the pandemic, what has been, I think, most important to us, and I'm with Matt. I mean, there are some of us whose roles are in the office, right? No question about it. I'm in the office 5 days a week. But what we have found coming out of the pandemic, especially when it comes to, let's say, women in the industry and tackling those perceptions about this industry being really male-dominated, our leaning in and openness and embracing of more flexibility in the workplace is making a difference, right? And I want to be as attractive to women in my industry as I am to men. So I'll leave it there. That's been a really influential thing for us. And that's why, you know, I am so supportive of flexible working to tackle those negative perceptions.
Yeah. And Susie, to the people interested in being on board, myself included, what do you have to say to us? So those of us jaded and just thinking, yeah, it's all talk and, you know, really very little action. It's the same people on several boards, and change isn't going to come anytime soon.
Well, this is exactly what we're trying to change. I mean, it's, you know, it's the same old names that you keep seeing because so many companies carry on using the same old headhunters with their little black books. But, you know, what I would say is that if you really want cognitive diversity on boards, then you have to really work out what the skills are you want on a board, and you have to almost frame your hiring requirements as a problem. You know, so you want to expand in China. So it doesn't matter what industry that person comes from. If they've got the sort of relevant experience where they built a business in China and they've dealt with staff retention problems and, you know, all sorts of issues like that, you know, they could go into, you know, any different sector. You know, we're constantly finding people from different sectors moving to, you know, because what we're doing is we're empowering individuals, yes, to put themselves forward for roles that they are passionate about doing. You know, so the individuals themselves can decide, can I give evidence of that required skill? And it's not the headhunter looking at their CV or looking at their LinkedIn thinking, oh, shall I approach them? No, they're too busy, or no, they'd have a conflict, or no, they don't have the relevant experience. So, you know, I think that's the way that it's by using this open hiring process and democratizing it. So then people like, you know, who are looking to successfully identify board opportunities now, I would say, well, I suppose there are three things. My three pieces of advice would be, firstly, really understand, why do you want to sit on a board? And I think for a busy executive thinking about taking on their first time non-exec role, it can be really a great talent development tool. we placed somebody who was head of online on Tesco onto a Lloyds Bank subsidiary board. And she said to me, what was so amazing is what I took from my day job to the boardroom and what I brought back from the boardroom to my day job. So I think really work out, why do you want a board? And then I'd say, once you have decided you want to sit on a board, then only apply for roles that sing to you. Don't try and push yourself as a sort of round peg into a not quite round hole. You know, all the successful candidates that we've had, they said, my God, I saw that role on your platform. I thought, that's my job. That is made for me. So, you know, really make sure it's something you're passionate about doing. And then my final piece of advice is preparation. You really do your research. It's amazing how many people turn up for interviews or write their applications and they just haven't researched it. And there are, you know, quite a few people who have. So that's probably one of my biggest, the main piece of advice I would give for getting a board role.
And great advice too. Matt and Anna, what will be your final words, pieces of advice to the audience today, following this session on leadership and allyship?
Ladies first.
Ladies first. Right. Thank you, Matt. I would say, well, I like to keep things very simple, Griselda, you know, because, you know, life is complex and complicated. So I would say, make a decision, right? You're either on board or you're not, and then just act consistently with your decision. My life and career experiences have shaped my passions, and I've made sure that I act and turn up and behave, you know, consistently true to my values. So you're either in or you're out. There's no halfway.
And we're definitely in, Anna. And Matt?
I think be true to yourself, work hard and believe. I think, you know, I actually think Susie hit the nail on the head. Don't try and be a square peg in a round hole. Don't feel like you have to conform or behave in a certain way, because if you do, and that's in life in general, then really you're setting yourself up for a fall. Be yourself, and if you're good enough, then you should be accepted. If you aren't accepted and you are good enough, then it's the wrong role for you and it's the wrong business for you to be in. So I think, you know, believe in yourself, work hard, and good things will happen. And as Nelson Mandela said, it always seems impossible until it's done. So
I didn't know you were such a great Nelson Mandela fan. You've just gone even further in my estimation, Matt.
It's my heroes. There we go.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Susie, Matt, and Anna. We've had such an enlightening and fun conversation, and I'm sure the people watching this will be taking a lot out of the hour we just had with them. If you'd like to connect with Anna, Susie, or Matt, you can find them on LinkedIn, but they also are available at the Void Ladies events and anywhere else on the cyberspace. So thank you so much, and we'll be connecting with you shortly. Stay tuned for the next element of the program. Thank you.